Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. In today's episode, we're going to follow up on a couple stories from Monday's Vegas race recap, including William Byron's crew chief, Rudy Fugle, calling out Ty Dillon and his team for the ugly incident that ended the 2014's day. JGR competition director Chris Gabehart talking about the importance of chemistry between crew chief and driver, and former JGR driver Kyle Busch talking about his relationship with former crew chief Randall Burnett. Plus, Rowdy had some interesting remarks about his mental health, paybacks, and the increase in horsepower for 2026. Plus, we'll talk about the latest TV ratings and why they are alarming, and we'll wrap up with our By the Numbers segment. But before we start crunching those numbers, let's go back to yesterday, and I was listening to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on my morning walk when Rudy Fugle came on. And unsurprisingly, one of the main topics of conversation for the crew chief of the number 24 car was that violent crash later in the race between William Byron and Ty Dillon. Take a listen to what Fugle had to say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not on the spotter stand, but there's two things that can happen, and that needs to happen on every one of those stops, in my opinion. Just maybe I'm old school, and I'm the person that still doesn't mind making a phone call instead of sending a text message or any of those things. Like, I think this culture-wise, we all need to do our job of communicating better. And but from a driver's standpoint, there was no hand out the window. There's a lot of people that will be busy and they'll do a swerve low on the backstretch, which usually means I'm coming to pit road. He had the opportunity to running between the leaders, multiple, in a really poor running position on track. He had the opportunity to, take a really shallow entry and make sure he was out of the way to hit pit road. All those things are possible and should have been done, in my opinion. And then from the spotter stand, I'm not up there, but Brandon, our spotter, didn't get clear communication that that's what's going on, and definitely didn't get it early enough. His attention was gotten when William was getting into turn 3, and as soon as you take your eyes off the track as you're entering turn 3, there's not enough time to say what's going on and process who's saying what. So the other thing that can or should happen, especially when somebody that's off the pace and running in between two leaders, pitting 20 some laps off the pit cycle, should probably come down and say, hey, we're getting ready to pit, be ready. I wasn't there, but it didn't seem like that communication was done either. So I thought all of that could have been done better.
Fugle was understandably unhappy about the situation because it ended what, to that point, had been a really good day, and basically put the 24 team in a must-win situation over the coming 2 races. Sticking with crew chiefs, sort of, now I want to talk about a conversation I also heard yesterday on SiriusXM, and that was with former crew chief and now Joe Gibbs Racing Director of Competition, Chris Gabehart. He talked about a variety of topics during his interview yesterday, including Denny Hamlin's emotional big win this past weekend at Las Vegas, and how he was a part of more than 20 of those wins as a crew chief of the number 11 car. But then he was asked a question about what's going on with the number 19 car and crew chief James Small and the chemistry with his driver, Chase Briscoe.
You know as well as I do how important driver crew chief trust and confidence is in one another. And, that's some of the things that I try to help with in the background, is instill that confidence and push those two to trust in each other. I used to always say the most powerful thing that Denny and I had together was, he gave me the amount of trust that I needed to, run to a practice. If I wanted to weld casters on the roof and flip it upside down and run it around on casters, he would do it. And that's so important. That relationship is so important, to be able to make those difficult 2-tire decisions or leave your driver out or whatever it might be, to know that your driver's got your back. And, that really is quite freeing and liberating. And as simple as that sounds, that's not easy to get, especially at the very top level of the sport with such accomplished drivers.
Listening to those words, all I could think was the key to any successful relationship, whether it's crew chief driver, husband, wife, friend, coworker, whatever the case may be, is trust. As Gabehart described, Hamlin trusted him implicitly with decisions from on top of the box, knowing that he would make the best decision for the team. So that takes me to an interview I heard with Kyle Busch yesterday on SiriusXM. You could say they had a good lineup yesterday. The 2-time champion talked about his 8th place result this weekend at Las Vegas on his home track, but I thought what was most interesting about his remarks was not what he said about this past weekend's race, but what he was considering doing over the last couple of weeks.
Messes on the track that didn't hinder us or mess with us that we were able to get through cleanly. And so we netted out with a decent day. But, about a week or two ago, I thought about going back through every single race of the year and remembering exactly why we got all the finishes we did. And I was like, you know what, what's that going to do for my mental health? It's probably not going to be very good, and it's probably just going to make me a list of paybacks. So I skipped out on doing that. And but I can just recall that we've been caught up in a lot of other people's messes and just been run over a lot of times. And so, I've said it before, I'll say it again. When you run back in the S blank, 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 then you get S blank, blank, blanked on, So you gotta run up front and keep yourself out of the mess and be able to go out there and again, execute that clean race and put yourself in position to have some good restarts at the end and be in position to just capitalize on a good, clean day.
Clearly, Busch was being reflective on the season, but instead of going back and reliving what is easily one of the worst years of his career, he realized that wouldn't be productive for his mental health, and it would potentially inspire him to see who he owed paybacks to. That's obviously someone who is very self-aware. Now, a common theme throughout this episode has been crew chiefs, so it's only appropriate that Busch also address the topic. The Richard Childress Racing driver got on the topic when Pete Pistone asked him a question about one of my favorite topics lately, AI.
I know there was obviously a crew chief change. You work with Andy Street now, Kyle, but I want to ask you, at this stage of your career, whether Andy stays there or not, if you were going to plug into AI, the prototypical Kyle Busch crew chief right now, what would be some of the things you're looking for in that crew chief?
Well, if I'm going to plug into AI and ask him of a crew chief of who I need to be, why wouldn't I just have AI do it?
Well, that's an option too, I guess.
That's an option, yes.
So what are you looking for then? What kind of characteristics are you looking for, Kyle?
Yeah, I don't know. It's every crew chief I've been with. I mean, they all work their guts out. They all work the long hours. They all, burn the midnight oil and spend way too much time away from their family and things like that. That's just the nature of this game, and it's so hard on crew chiefs and engineers and car chiefs, the guys that travel, the truck drivers, everything, man. I mean, it's just it's hard. It's a grueling game, that's for sure. So. I don't know exactly, but, Randall was a really good crew chief. He's a great leader. He does a good job with his guys. All his guys respect him and things like that, so just wasn't quite getting the net results of what we needed to from that, which a lot of it, I just mentioned, is not his fault. We just get run over, but, fact of the matter is we got to figure out ways of being able to qualify up front and starting up front and keeping ourselves up front. And we didn't qualify up front this weekend, but we were able to continue to work our way forward. And a lot of days that hasn't quite happened for us the way we needed to. But, long answer there. But, it's just it comes down to one that you can kind of gel with and get along with, and personalities mesh. Although, Adam, I would say Stevens was my best crew chief that I've had with results-wise. And, he and I obviously was able to just be able to air it out, and whether I made mistakes or whether I needed to get better or whether I felt like he made mistakes or he needed to be better, we could just always talk it out, air it out, and no hurt feelings or anything like that. So, that was one of the great things with him and I that made us so successful. And I think you got to have that camaraderie when you look at the next guy.
I love Busch's initial response about why he would even need a crew chief and he could just use AI. In his full response, though, he noted his best crew chief was Adam Stevens and how they could air it out and there wouldn't be any hurt feelings. That does make you think it might have been an issue between him and Burnett and why the two didn't mesh together these last couple of seasons. And finally, the last thing from Kyle Busch's interview yesterday was what he had to say about the increased horsepower in 2026.
Well, I mean, I think it is a step in the right direction. I'm not sure we're getting all the way where we need to be, but, certainly a step in the right direction. I did test that at Iowa Speedway earlier this year. We did a couple back-to-backs on that, and, you could notice a little bit difference, but it wasn't significant. Over the course of what did we run on tires there? I think we went about 80 laps, 90 laps on tires. at, the guys that won the race, I think, went 140 laps on tires there at the end of the race at Iowa. So hopefully with, 100 more horsepower, they can't do that anymore. So that's certainly the intent. That's the goal, right? I think we saw too many guys stay out and go too long on tires at some of these short tracks where, that just shouldn't be the name of the game. So, Goodyear gives us an allotted amount of tires at a lot of places, and you'd kind of like to see teams be able to venture off from one another and burn tires up differently than what they. If you're all on the same tire strategy, you're not going to see much passing. If you can have guys that kind of offset themselves with different tire strategies, that seems to be the best way to promote some good strategy, some good passing, some better racing.
Busch said something similar to what Kyle Larson had to say, and that it's a step in the right direction. And our last story for the day is this past weekend's television ratings from Las Vegas. Now, over the last month or so, I haven't really covered television ratings, but I thought these from this past weekend were particularly noteworthy, simply because NASCAR wasn't the top viewed motorsport for the weekend. That title belonged to NHRA, which, as you can see, had 1.872 million viewers on Fox, while the NASCAR Cup race came in second at 1.71 million viewers on USA Network. I think it's kind of funny because if you remember back to earlier in the year, Fox was promoting IndyCar as the fastest racing on earth. NHRA team owner and funny car driver Bob Tosca took exception to that and called out Fox saying, quote, "The truth is, it's an insult to the fans and to the drivers for Fox to go on TV and say that the fastest motorsports in the world is IndyCar," end quote. Well, this 2025 season, IndyCar never beat NASCAR in the ratings. This past weekend, NHRA did. There might be something to what Tosca had to say. What I'm really interested to see is what happens this weekend. We've heard all year how F1 has been closing the gap and its viewership numbers have been increasing while NASCAR's have been on the decline. This weekend, the US Grand Prix will be run at my home track at Circuit of the Americas and will be broadcast on ABC. Will the F1 numbers beat NASCAR? It's possible, but here's why I don't think it will happen. The final 3 Cup races will be carried on NBC, the big network. So this weekend, the NASCAR race will be on NBC going head-to-head with F1 race on ABC. I'll definitely keep you posted on what the numbers look like after Sunday. And let's wrap up today's episode with more numbers in our By the Numbers segment. First off, we'll start with our last 5 races analysis, and we're going to take a look back at last week's numbers. And I don't know if you'll recall, but last week I highlighted how Christopher Bell was top of the board with the best average finishing position of the year at 4.0 with all of his last 5 races inside the top 7. This week, the number 20 driver has outdone himself, as you can see, with an incredible average finishing position of 3.2 over his last 5. His 6th place finish at New Hampshire, the only race outside of the top 5. What makes it all the more impressive is Chase Briscoe is in second, 5 full spots behind him with an AFP of 8.2, including 4 of his 5 finishes inside the top 10. Coming in third this week is Kyle Larson at 9.8. The number 5 driver has been solid over his last 4, all of them inside the top 7. That 32nd at Bristol is his only blemish in that time. Following Larson is Joey Logano, who has 3 results inside the top 6 in his last 5, and Tyler Reddick is 5th with an AFP of 11.6, including 3 top 10 finishes of his own. Rounding out the top 10 are Chris Buescher and Michael McDowell, who come in tied at 6 with an AFP of 12 even, and then it's Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and William Byron. Now let's take a look at our race progression graphs from Las Vegas, and we'll start with our top 5 finishers. Similar to last week, the top 5 finishers were front runners for most of the race, and as you can see, they all followed similar strategies throughout the day. Oh yeah, and 3 of them were from Joe Gibbs Racing. So with JGR out of the way, let's take a look at HMS. Kyle Larson was inside the top 5 on our previous graph, but as you can see, Alex Bowman had a solid day as well with a 7th place finish, while Chase Elliott and William Byron did not. The number 9 involved in that big incident, and the number 24 in that crash late in the race with Ty Dillon. We talked about Kyle Busch earlier, and you can see the 2-time champion had a day where he was steadily making his way forward and ultimately finished 8th. Meanwhile, his RCR teammate Austin Dillon appeared to be on a similar trajectory, but was also involved in that late big crash and finished 25th. RFK Racing had a solid day on Sunday in Sin City, with Ryan Preece having an up-and-down day that ultimately finished with a 9th place result, while Brad Keselowski started deep in the field but still managed to earn a top 10 of his own. I think we can expect to see him in our biggest movers. And Chris Buescher remained steady on the day, starting 11th and finishing 12th. Our last race progression graph is the fellas at Team Penske. Joey Logano had a strong day, starting 9th and finishing 6th. Austin Cindric has been quiet lately, but managed to earn the second best result for the team, finishing 11th, while Ryan Blaney's day ended early with that blown tire, and he finished dead last. Which takes us to our biggest movers on the day, and as you might expect, Blaney's first stage blowout earned him one of the biggest drops on the day, losing 24 spots. But he wasn't alone. His buddy Bubba Wallace lost 15 positions on the day, while SVG dropped 20. Ty Gibbs equaled Blaney's drop, losing 24 positions. But the biggest loser on the day was William Byron, who lost 31 spots, dropping from 5th to 36th. Meanwhile, those moving the right direction were Noah Gragson, who picked up 15 spots on the day. Riley Herbst makes his first appearance this year by gaining 16 positions, and he was followed by Austin Cindric, who gained 20 spots, and we have a tie at the top with Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch both gaining 24 positions throughout the race. And finally, our last item for the day is our Mario Kart point standings. Let's start by taking a look at last week's standings, and Christopher Bell held a 16-point lead over Kyle Larson and a 17-point lead over his JGR teammate Chase Briscoe. Denny Hamlin was in 5th with 206 points, 22 points behind Bell. This week, Bell's lead has shrunk down to 14 points over Larson, and with his win on Sunday, Hamlin is now in 3rd position at 221, 17 points behind. The Chases follow with Briscoe in 4th, 1 point behind Hamlin and 9 points ahead of 5th place, Elliott. If Bell keeps busting off these top 5 finishes like I showed in that last 5 races analysis, he'll be hard to beat in the final 3 races. All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Let's talk about it. First, let me know what you thought of the comments of Rudy Fugle and what he had to say about Ty Dillon and the number 10 team's lack of communication. Next up, what did you think of Chris Gabehart's comments on chemistry? And more specifically, how do you feel that chemistry or lack thereof played a role in the breakup of Kyle Busch with Randall Burnett? And for you Busch fans, I'm genuinely curious to hear what you thought of his remarks about how he opted not to go back through the 2025 season because it would just stress him out and make him think of who he needed to pay back. And finally, what do you think of the Vegas TV ratings? Do you think F1 can top NASCAR this weekend? And lastly, it's been a while since I gave anything away, so I'm going to give away this Beatin' and Bangin' hat. All you have to do is write BB hat in the comments. That's it, BB hat. I'll have a random draw and announce the winner in Monday's video. This hat is also available for purchase in my store, along with that Cup Series calendar. Check out the link in the description. Thanks again, guys, for checking out the latest episode and supporting the channel. I really and truly appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your day.